I think I've obviously given you a run through some of the options if you need to ask questions or interrupt me. So otherwise, I'll just get going. So a little bit about Risc for those of you that aren't customers of ours that don't know us. We are a cloud specialist, been in business for about 20 years, just over 20 years now, and our focus is around IT security, productivity, which is primarily Teams now in the current climate, and agility, which is all about helping customers move services into the cloud. And we look after about 25,000 end users across about 1,000 customers, and we also work with about 250 small local IT partners across the UK. We partner with a number of organizations. Obviously the key one for today is Microsoft, and Microsoft represents about 75% of what we do as a business. A couple of others I'll just quickly mention because I will touch on them as we go through the session. WaveNet, they provide the voice enablement for Teams for us. So we have a number of customers that are using Teams for full replacement of their phone system and also contact center and things like compliance-based call recording. So they're an important partner in terms of Teams. And then Redstor we've worked with for most of those 20 years. They provide the cloud backup and disaster recovery services we provide for both traditional server services, but also cloud to cloud. So the ability to back up and recover your complete Office 365 environment, for example. We work with Redstor and they have a product to do that. Protos, very quickly, I'll mention them because we do run sessions along with Protos. They're our cybersecurity partner, so they run a lot of all of the cybersecurity and cyber essentials assessments for ourselves and our customers. So they're the key ones in terms of today. So in terms of today's session, I mean the original idea of what we used to call Teams Quick Start was looking back at the beginning of 2020 when suddenly everybody was forced to work from home. We had a lot of our customers asking us if we could give them training. So rather than picking off individual customers, we decided to just produce a series of webinars and just invited both our existing customers and anybody else that would be interested in those sessions. So this is an evolution of that, and the whole idea and the concept is based on the old 80-20 rules. So we try and cover what we think is 80% of what you need to know as an end user. So this is very much an end user focused session. We run other sessions for IT decision makers and business decision makers and communications specialists, but this is all about end users, whether you are an information worker, whether you manage a team, or whether you are actually a business decision maker who needs to roll teams out within your organization. This is for everybody. But as I say, it's a real rattle through Teams. So we're going to try and cover the bulk of it in an hour. We will hang on at the end if anybody's got any questions. So as I say, we'll try and cover the 80% in what we would normally take 20% of the time for a full-blown training course. So we'll cover some concepts around Teams, what it is, for those of you that have either just started to use it or not used it yet. We'll talk about Teams and channels and how they work together, how to post messages, how to upload, find and actually collaborate on files with multiple users. And then kind of in the second more sort of interactive side of it, we're going to cover the other features of Teams, so chats, calls, how to set up and manage a meeting, and then a little bit about some of the devices and the different apps that you can add into Teams and the different devices that you can run Teams on. So not just obviously Windows or Mac or web, but also things like iPad, iPhone, and Android. And then, assuming we've got time at the end, we'll just talk a little bit about some of the future developments that we see coming down the line from Microsoft. And then there's a section on useful information. But as I say, don't worry about taking notes. Sean will send you copies of all of the slides and all of the useful information that we think would be good for you going forward. So that's enough about the intro. So why Teams? And again, apologies for those of you that have been on one of my sessions before. You'll have seen this slide before. So this is one of the original Zoom meetings that the cabinet ran. I think there's Boris in the top left trying to get his camera straight. But you know, a lot of customers ask us, well, you know, why do we want to use Teams? We've already got Zoom. We're happy with Zoom. Some of them are using things like Cisco WebEx, which is obviously another alternative meeting platform. And I think for us, and that's a little screenshot of the new Teams layout with the 7x7 video feed, the dynamic view. I think the main reason is, you know, Teams does a lot more than just meetings. So it's a place to get your work done. It does, obviously, as I mentioned before, calls, chats, document collaboration, meetings as well. So it's much more than just a meeting tool. And an important thing, I'm making the assumption that most of you, if not all of you, are already using Microsoft 365, Office 365. It's part of that tool set. So unless you've got email only, you'll already have Teams. So it makes a lot of sense to try and take advantage of it. And as you already have your identity and your security and everything else managed within Office 365, then it's very, very straightforward. So just building on that, it's part of 365. Then Teams is another app that sits within the Office 365 suite from Microsoft. So obviously you've got Exchange, you've got Sharepoint, you've got Tasks. If those of you have been using it for a while will have used Skype for Business in the past. Obviously that's now moving and evolving into Teams, things like Yammer and Forms, etc. Power BI. So part of that suite, and actually, although Teams is a new app, or relatively new app as part of Office 365, it also pulls together a lot of the underlying apps within Office 365. So if you look at where Microsoft are trying to take the product, so again, people say, well, why is there something else I need to learn? I use Outlook every day. Why do I need to use Teams as well? And I think that, again, the short answer to that is Microsoft's long-term view is that Teams will become the only place you need to go to get work done. So you'll see already, if you look on the right-hand side, the functions that were in Skype for Business, so voice, video, and meetings, instant messaging, chat, that's already built into Teams and enhanced. SharePoint and OneDrive for Business that sit within Office 365, they all sit under Teams. So Teams doesn't have its own document management platform storage; it uses SharePoint. So in effect, it's a front end, it's a portal to some of these other services like SharePoint. Outlook itself, you've already got your calendar in Teams, and Microsoft will be bringing your email into Teams as well at some point this year. So you can see eventually at some point in the future, Outlook will possibly go and be replaced by Teams. If any of you use Yammer, not many people do, but that's an enterprise social network. Again, that's now built into Teams, and the ability to co-author documents with colleagues. That's not new in Teams. It's just been made better. So you've been able to work on documents together as long as that document's stored somewhere that you can both, or the group of you can access that file. Then you can co-author those documents together. So that's been there for a while, but Teams just makes it easier to manage. So again, just going through the basics. So in terms of what you get out of the box with Teams, it can do basically 5 things. So as I mentioned before, store, share, and co-author files within chat conversations and within the channels. So those channels sit within a team, and we'll talk through that. So I'm not going to just give you death by PowerPoint today. We will be running through a demo, which will hopefully bring some of this to life a little bit more. The chat function, again, if you currently use Skype for Business or have used Skype for Business in the past, similar to that, but much more enhanced, much richer, and the ability to be able to upload documents into a chat, whether that's a one-to-one chat or a one-to a small team chat, is a massive improvement over what was there with Skype. Calendar, as I mentioned, obviously what we're doing today is effectively a scheduled meeting, basically using the standard Teams meeting function that you've all joined now, whether you've joined through the Teams app on your PC, whether you've joined through a web browser or an iPad, doesn't matter. Obviously, Teams supports multiple platforms. And then the ability to make calls. Out of the box, Teams will let you do Teams to Teams calls and Teams to Teams video, both internally and to people outside of your organization that are running Teams. And again, we'll cover that in the demo and bring that to life a little bit better. But also, as I mentioned when I talked about WaveNet in the introduction, you can actually add full voice capability and bring your traditional telephony and phone numbers into Teams. So just very quickly, a couple of slides on some of the concepts that I'm going to be talking about for those of you that have not used Teams in anger before. So obviously you've got your organization. Below your organization, you will have a number of teams. At the moment, you might not have any. You might have a few that you've had to play with, or you might have a fully blown structured Teams deployment. So, but the basic concept is you've got your organization, you've got a team, and then within each team you have a number of channels, which is where the conversations take place, where the files are stored, where the applications are tabbed. And again, you'll see that in the demo. So the team level is where you decide, who in my organization, or if you allow guest access, and again, we'll talk about that, who outside of my organization am I going to allow to collaborate on these within this team. And the channels are more around particular subjects. And again, when we see the demo, it'll make a little bit more sense, hopefully. Just one concept I want to get straight, because we will talk about it and it can be confusing. So Teams has two concepts of external users, so guests and external users. So a guest user, and we'll cover that in the demo, is somebody from outside of your organization that you invite into your organization as a guest. So effectively they become part of your Office 365 organization as a guest. So that's particularly useful if you're working with people from outside, individuals that maybe don't have Teams, that you can bring them in and effectively they use your Teams access. And then external users, or what used to be called federation, means you can communicate with somebody externally that also has Teams or Skype for Business. So you can chat, you can call, you can see their present status. So for instance, you can see whether if you tag me in a chat, you can see whether I'm online, available, offline, busy, etc. So that's what's known as an external user. And the present side, just before I go into the demo, is kind of an underreported feature, if that makes sense. So I think obviously you'll see as we go through the demo, you can see people's status, again, both within your organization. And here's a nice picture of Andy, if you know him, who works within Risc. So you'll see if I hover over his little profile there, I can see actually he's red, so he's busy. He's actually in a call. It tells me he's in a call, and it gives me a bunch of information about him as well, because obviously he's an internal user, so I can see that level of access. I can message him. So that's the sort of internal view, and you'll see down the left hand side there's some different colors. So Bruce is on yellow, that means he's away, which is automatically set. And then outside the organization, so I'm going to pick on Dom. He's one of our customers at Alzheimer's Research. So again, I can see some information about him. He's external, so I won't see quite the granularity of detail I do for Andy, but I can see whether he's online and available, whether he's busy, whether he's away, or whether he's offline. And again, that presence status is something we'll cover in the demo, and is an important feature, particularly if you're thinking about home working, flexible working, when you want to be able to see your team in one place and see who's available, who's in a call, etc. Then the presence and the contact list is critical to that.
Hi, okay. Mark, sorry to interrupt you. Helen's got her hand up, so I'm just allowing you to unmute yourself, Helen, if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Sean. Jamie. Yeah, it was just regarding the chat function. It's not showing.
Okay. We do have this occasionally, don't we? What are you using the Windows app, Helen?
Yes, yeah.
Or have you joined on the web?
No, I'm Windows app.
Okay, it does occasionally. Teams being when we talk about some of the numbers that Microsoft are seeing in terms of how many users they've got on the platform now, can sometimes hold back features, but there's no reason why that should be missing for you. So apologies for that. If we leave Helen unmuted, guys, then obviously if she's got a question, she can ask it. Did you have a question, or are you just worried about it?
No,
got a hand up as well. Sorry, Helen, didn't mean to interrupt then.
That's all right. No, it was just that point, because it's not just myself. There's others in our organisation that can't see the chat function.
Okay, that's it's a feature of Teams. No, that was being facetious. It does sometimes happen depending on whether you've got Teams in your. Do you actually use Teams in your organisation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's something we need to check out. I think if we use the raise hand function, then I think hopefully you've all got the raise hand. I think if you've got a question you want to ask and you haven't got access to the chat, obviously some of you have, because I noticed Hannah's asked a question in the chat there that Kirsty's answered. If you haven't got access to the chat and you want to ask a question, then by all means put your hand up. But I will pause at the end of the demo and take some questions if that's a good time.
Yeah, so, I think as well, we can't see the chat like at all. So if there is questions that are relevant, that will be quite useful as well.
Yeah, we can kind of run through those again at the end. And the other thing we actually do, and we'll probably build it onto the ones we had from last year, we've got a rolling Q&A document that every question we get asked, we kind of put that into the document and with the answer. Obviously, because then you get a common list of frequently asked questions. So we'll make sure they're added on as well. But right. we'll come back to Hannah's question after I do the demo, then Kirsty, I think, if that's okay.
And Candice?
Yeah, sorry, it was actually the same point as was just being made there, the fact that there's no chat. What I was going to say was I wondered if it was the same for everybody, because I don't have any view of the chat either, but you've answered that because you've already got questions there. So yeah, apologies, same point.
It's an odd one. We will look into that. We did have it in the very early days last year. Occasionally people didn't have the chat window and we couldn't actually nail down why that was. But yeah, we'll look into it. But thanks for raising that, both of you. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'll launch into the demo now. So hopefully you can see all of that. So again, for those of you that are already using Teams, let's just move that window out of the way. For those of you already using Teams, then this will look familiar. But I'm going to go through it from beginning to end very, very quickly. So the obvious place to start here is your status. So this is where your picture will be. If I click here, you'll see I'm actually using our demo Teams platform rather than our live one. So there's no confidential information on here or customer information. As you can see there, Teams has automatically detected that A, I'm in a Teams meeting, and B, I'm presenting. So it'll automatically set my status there to what they call presenting. So that's actually, if you can see that, it's got a little line through it. So that's actually do not disturb. So I won't get any calls coming through. So if somebody calls me on Teams, it will go straight to voicemail. You can manually override these statuses here. You'll see on the left-hand side, you've got these manuals. So if you feel like not being disturbed for a particular period of time, you can click that and change your status there. And then obviously when you finish, then just click reset and it will go back to whatever the system decides. Generally, we recommend let Teams manage your status for you, because what it will do is look in your calendar. So if I'm busy in a meeting in my calendar, it'll set me to in a meeting, or externally, people will see that as just busy. Likewise, if I walk away from my keyboard for 10 minutes, then it will come up and say, Mark's been away for 10 minutes. So, Teams will do most of that for you. It's just particularly if you've got, you don't want to be disturbed, so you don't want any pop-ups, messages coming through or any calls coming through, you can use that. We'll go into the settings piece in a bit more detail actually when we talk about calls and telephony, because that's an important place. But obviously this little cog here is where you set most of your options. So you'll see there devices being the important one. So you can see you can decide, do I want to use my headset, do I want to use my speakers in my PC. A really useful one is this secondary ringer here, and again we'll come back to it in a second. So if you're using a headset day to day like I am, but you don't have it on your head all the time, then actually if you set the secondary ringer, it'll also ring the PC as well. So you think, I've got a call. So just some useful tips there. And then the call management side we'll cover in a bit more detail in the next section. This search bar at the top, if you've not used it or done much with it, is hugely powerful. Think of this as the Google search, or Bing search if you want, being Microsoft politically correct, is a place where you can search for anything. So for example, if I want to search on something that contains the word Microsoft, for example, if I type it in there, it will pull up any team, any channel, any meeting that I've been involved in, and also some of the documentation that contains the word Microsoft. As it says there, if you press enter for all the results, you'll see on the left hand side it then starts to filter them into messages. So any message that's been posted in a channel under a team, or any message in a chat that contains the word Microsoft, it will pull those up and go back all the way to, well, day one, basically, when you started using Teams, unless you remove it deliberately, or if your company has a retention policy that automatically deletes content after so many months. Likewise, click on files there, you'll see again, and this is the advantage of having documents, files within Teams, because then once they're in Teams and viewable, then you can search on them, which is obviously gives you this sort of single place to find files. Same with people. Obviously, we haven't got anybody called Microsoft, but if I try Andy, there you'll see I've got a user called Andy. I've got a chat conversation going on that contains Andy, and I've also got a meeting that I had with Andy. And if I press there, you'll see now I've got a person. So that top search bar is really useful just to find content, because in Teams, naturally, it's not always as structured as it maybe is in SharePoint, where you traditionally say, well, here's my directory, here's my subdirectory, here's my another directory, here's my file, bang, bang, bang. Whereas Teams can be a little bit more collaborative and less structured, so you can actually search and find content. The other thing you can do is this shortcuts as well. So if you just put the / key there, you've got a bunch of commands that you can do. So if you get really quick at using Teams, you just say call Andy. Sorry, would help if I could spell. There we go, and then just click Andy and it'll call him. So I won't do that now because it'll put you all on pause, but that's just the kind of thing you can do from the taskbar. So that's just a quick sort of rattle around the main features in the taskbar. I'll come back to them in a little bit more detail. So if I just go straight into Teams, so on the left hand side you'll see I've got a number of tabs. So the first 4, 5, 6, the first 6 are the same as everybody will have. Obviously you can unpin these or move them around if you want to put files further up. It's up to you. And then I've got some other apps that I've actually added in, and I'll show you how to do that if you've not done that before. So I've got tasks by planner here, I've got Zoom and Trello. So back to the point about Microsoft wanting Teams to be the only place you need to go to get work done. There are thousands of third-party plugins to Teams. So even competitors like Zoom, even Cisco WebEx have a plugin to Teams, so you can launch it within Teams. You don't have to leave Teams to set up a Zoom meeting, for example, which is quite handy. Okay, but in terms of what Teams delivers out of the box, if I just click on what I've got here, so this is me, Mark Lawton. I've also got another user on here called Andy, who's, if I just pop that up, I'll show you, that's actually using the web app there. So I'm just using Chrome to access that one, and you'll see there Andy Owens is available. So I'll be using him as my demo buddy. But just if you look at the teams here and just quickly rattle through, I've got one here called company wide team, and again, good practice to have at least one team that just automatically enrolls everybody, and that's what's called an organization wide team. So if you can see it, apologies if it's small, at the top right under my little Risc logo there, you'll see it says org wide. So that basically anybody that joins or leaves the organization will be automatically enrolled or dumped out of that team. So as I say, it's useful to have at least one of those. That means for things like company-wide information, any strategy messages you want to send to people. For instance, we have a whole well-being channel under our company-wide team that everybody's got access to. So really useful to have that. The second kind of team is what's called an organizational team, which is slightly different in the fact that people aren't automatically enrolled, but they do have the option to join. They don't have to be invited. So as you'll see in a second when I show you how to manage a team and the channels, generally you have to add people into a team to make them members. With this type of team, people can automatically join. If I drag Andy's little view over here, you'll see he's only a member of a couple of teams, bless him. So if I just click the little option here at the bottom that says join or create a team. So if I click that, okay, he's got a number of options there. So this one here on the right, because he's not currently a member of that all welcome team, he's got the option to literally just join it. So click join, and you'll see on the left hand side now this team has appeared, so he's got access to all of the same collateral now in that all welcome team. So you didn't have to invite him specifically, and that's really useful if you've got, again, maybe a social team, a special interest team that you want to kind of invite people to join, but give them the option to do it themselves. This one here, enter a code. So again, if you're creating a team and you don't want to have to go through and invite people individually, if you've got an email group, you just want to send a code to them, you can do that. So if I look at my Teams end user training here, and I'll come back to this manage team here, this is where you manage all the settings for the team. So let me just expand that so you can see that. On this little settings tab at the top, you've got a couple of options. So you can do little things like add a team picture in to the Teams end user training, make it look a bit more professional. So I'm going to pick a nice picture of Snowden there, add that onto there, and that will then, when it sorts itself out, change that picture. But the other thing I say you can do is have this team code here. So you've got an 8-digit code here. If I copy that, drop that down, go back to Andy's view here, enter the code in there so he can join the team there. And you'll see on the left-hand side now, he's now a member of the Teams end user training team, which is the one we're going to be using today, just to demonstrate how that works. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about team structure, what you should allow, what you shouldn't allow. We've got another session that goes into a bit more detail about Teams best practice. So some of our customers just allow anybody to create a team. Some, like we've got set up here, only allow you to create a team from an existing group, which gives you a bit more control over who can create a team. So before they can create a team, a group has to exist in Office 365, and that gives you, as an IT team, if you're part of IT, a little bit more control. So you can say, put a process in place to request a new team, because what you can end up with is, if you've experienced this, is what we call team sprawl, which means you end up with hundreds of teams with a couple of people in each one channel and nothing else. And you end up thinking, well, I need to rewind this and start again. So you can actually put a little bit more structure in place, so you don't let everybody create a team from scratch. They have to actually request permission to do it. So that's here. So Andy could, or I could rather, create a team from scratch from an existing 365 group here, but I won't do that. I've got an existing team here called Teams End User Training, which we looked at before. So as you'll see here, I've got a number of guests in there. So just a couple of tips really. There's whoever creates that team, so in this case it's me, Mark Lawton, always have at least 2 owners. Obviously if I'm away and somebody needs to add or remove somebody from that team, they can't do that if I'm not there. So I'm going to promote Andy here and make him an owner. So you'll see now we've got 2 owners, and that's a little pop-up message that Andy's got to tell him that I've made him an owner of that team. You'll see there's also some guests. So the ones that have got member next to them, they're internal people. So I've added some internal guests there. Also, if you look at the one at the very bottom here, mlawton12, that's my Gmail account. So back to the point that you can actually have external guests. They don't have to have teams. They can just be, as long as I've got an email address that can be validated. So generally Gmail, Live, Hotmail, Outlook.com, things like that. You can invite people in externally. Obviously, think about the security implications of that, because once they're in there, they can pretty much do the majority of what an internal member can do. I mean, there are some settings you can change here. So by default, guests aren't allowed to create channels, for example, or delete channels. Obviously, members are, but again, you can control as the owner of the team who's allowed to do what. Again, generally, the recommendation is to leave those as default and not play with those. So just going back to this team here, what I'm going to do is just very quickly create a new channel underneath Teams End User Training, and then just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to add a channel here. I'm going to call it Teams. I'm going to call it Flexible Teams. Okay. Put a bit more description in there if you want, so people know what it's about. You've got another option here, which I'll just very quickly show you. So if you drop that down, this allows you to effectively subdivide that team. So in Teams End User Training, we've got 6 or 7 members. If you wanted to have a subset of those looking at this channel, you can make it a private one and then just add specific people in. I won't do that for now. If I just add that channel in there, you'll see on the left hand side very quickly. There we go. So we've now created a brand new channel. So that's what it looks like. So there's no conversation started yet. There's no content in there. Nothing's happened. So by default, you get these 3 tabs. Post is obviously where you can post conversations. Files is where files are stored, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And then Wiki is effectively a board where you can take notes. Obviously, you can add other applications in there instead, like OneNote, for example, or Word. And again, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So right, what I'm going to do now is just start a new conversation. So trying to get used to my new keyboard. Yeah. Okay, so there's a number of things you can do here. So as well as posting the message, you can attach a file to it. So I'm going to actually click the little attach icon down there, and I can either pick a recent file I've been working on. I can browse existing files that exist somewhere in another team or a channel. I can upload it from a OneDrive or any other drive that I've got attached. So I've actually set Google Drive up as a link into mine, which you can do Dropbox and things like that. But I'm just, for this demo today, I'm just going to upload this from my computer. So if I go to Documents, let's just grab the training script there, which is a Word document. So I'm going to pop that into the message. Okay, and it's now part of the message. I haven't sent the message yet. You need to do the little arrow on the right here. But the other thing that is really useful is you can actually, if you want to grab somebody's attention, because by default you're not notified every time somebody posts something in a channel, unless you really want to, because obviously it can get very busy. But if I want to actually grab Andy and tell him that there's a new document in here I want him to see, you can do it that way, or you can notify everybody that's in that that channel. So flexible working with teams as a channel, so I can actually notify the whole channel, or at the highest level I can notify the whole team if I want. Obviously normally you wouldn't do all three of those, you do one or the other. You wouldn't notify Andy and the channel and the team, but I'll do that just again for the purposes of today. You can actually post messages in multiple channels. I won't go through that, but if you just click there you can actually post it into another channel as well, if you like, any channel that you've got access to. So you could put it in the company-wide general as well. So I'm going to just take that off for the purposes of today. Click that. So that's the first message done. So you'll see, hopefully there you can see that Google Chrome's popped up to tell Andy that I've mentioned him in a post. So that's done a number of things. It's notified all the people there. It's uploaded that document, and if I click in files now, you'll see now that that document is there, that Word document, and you can edit it directly within Teams. So if you click open, Teams has its own editor for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF possibly by now. Also you can open it directly in, if you've got the full Word app, you can open it directly in the app as well, but it's sitting in that file section of Teams. So again, it might be obvious, but you don't need to attach a file to a message to get it into that channel. So you could just literally go to upload files here, add a couple of, we'll add this PDF in here, we'll add the sales forecast in, and we'll add this Word document in here, open them, and then you'll see on the right, it'll say uploading 3 items. So again, once those documents are in the team and you have access to that team, you can work on that document collaboratively. So if I just open that script here and edit it in Teams, you'll see Teams kind of turns into a Word editor, and then I can start editing. Let's see if I turn it. So if I flick back to Andy's here, click on the flexible working with Teams, go to the file. Sorry, this is a little bit quick flicking around, but hopefully you're following it, and click on open the Teams training script. So Andy can now open and work on that document at the same time. So a couple of things you'll notice here. So hopefully just give it a chance to settle. You'll see, this is Andy's view. You'll see that Mark's already in the document, and that's where he is. You'll see at the top there, that little icon tells me who's in this document. And obviously there could be 10, 15, 20, however many people editing that document at the same time. If I, as Andy, just go down and start editing this last page, there's some more info. If I go back to my original view there, Mark's view, I can see that Andy's in the document. Click there, go to location. So it takes me to where he is in the document. So you can see who's editing it. So again, back to the point, once it's in a shared area within Teams, you can collaborate on it with a number of people. So that's giving me some questions coming in there. I'll let Kirsty and Sean answer those. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so that's kind of document collaboration. And again, just to show you, when I talked about the fact that SharePoint sits behind Teams, if you actually click the little icon here that says opening SharePoint, touch wood, if my security is working right, it should just open it. There you go. Okay, so what you'll see here, it's actually got the old logo on there. It hasn't updated the logo within SharePoint yet. It takes you straight to documents and then a directory that's got the same name as the channel, and you'll see the 4 documents are actually in there now. What you can do in the SharePoint view is you can actually go up one level to the actual team level rather than the channel level, and you'll see under here are all of the previous events that we've done. So you'll see a directory with the files in for each of those previous events, and you can actually sync it at that level. So this sync bit here basically synchronizes whatever's there locally onto your PC using Explorer, and I'll just very quickly show you what that looks like. So if I go here, you can do that sync either from Teams, just syncing that channel content, or you can do it at the SharePoint level. Doesn't matter either, works, to be honest. So let me just click sync there, and it should, if I do it in SharePoint, actually, probably, there we go. So it pops up to say we're going to open OneDrive and sync these locally. Is that okay? So yes. Okay. This is what happens when you're using more than one user identity. So it's obviously trying to log me in as Andy. So let me just remember his password. Okay, it's all right. It's because it's logged me out of OneDrive. Okay, so hopefully, there you go. So I've already synchronized some content down from Risc Service. You'll see I've got the all company general team in there, and I've also got the Teams Energy Trading documents. But there's the channel I've just created. If I go into there, you'll see that I've got the 4 documents actually sitting on my PC now. And again, sorry, let's get rid of those. And again, if you want to add content, you can add the content onto your PC and it'll sync it back up to Teams. So, for example, if I just go, if I want to pop these very nice pictures of Snowden in there, if I copy those, go back to the directory, paste them in. Obviously, they're now sitting locally on my PC, so they're syncing back up. If I go back up to flexible working with Teams, give it a little refresh. There you go. Okay, so without kind of banging on about the point, there's that's just this file here, for example, is a single file sitting in SharePoint, and you're just looking at it through a view of either SharePoint directly or Teams or locally. It's the same file. So the other thing I wanted to just show you in terms of managing Teams and notifications, etc., is, I mean, you can actually change how you're notified. So let me just pop in, it's probably more relevant. So by default, if I click these 3 dots here and look at channel notifications, just go to customized. By default, you won't be notified every time somebody posts something into a channel. Again, as I say, you could just be bombarded. So I would recommend that you leave these as default, unless it's something you particularly want to be notified every time somebody posts or uploads a file into. So you can change that to one of 3 options. So banner is that bit that keeps popping up in the bottom right to notify you that somebody's wants your attention. Feed is the activity feed, which I'll show you in a second. So say that, and I want to include all replies. Obviously, by default, when somebody mentions you, it flags it up as a notification. So now I've changed the notifications on this channel now. So if Mark posts something new in there, okay. So as you see there, bottom right, it says Mark posted a new message. So now I've changed that. If I go into Andy's activity feed, so probably a good time to quickly cover the activity feed. So that basically captures everything that you may have missed, and you can filter it by different kinds of content. So anytime you mentioned, anytime somebody replies to one of your conversations, missed calls, voicemails, etc. So you'll see down here, for example, one I prepared earlier. I've got a voicemail this morning from this mobile number. Click on that, takes you into your voicemails. You can click and you can play that voicemail, and it, as you can see, that it does its best to transcribe it. I don't know who Tony is, but anyway, said it's Mark here. It's Thursday morning, so it got most of it right. It'll also send you an email with the voicemail attached to it as well. But that's another example. And obviously, I've also had a missed call from Mark, so that lights up that activity feed there with a little red alarm to tell you you've got missed activities. So if I mention Andy again, just to show you, Look at this. Andy, now you'll see the activity feed's got a little one next to it to show that there's a missed activity, and it says Mark mentioned you. There you go. And if you click the activity, it takes you straight into the particular channel. So really, really useful for getting people's attention. And obviously, if you've got a team of 100 people in that team, and you post something in a channel, but you want to draw one person's attention to it, then it's great for that. I think that's probably everything on Teams, other than just very, very quickly. You saw in that team we've got some external users. So again, members and guests. Literally, if you add a member here, and again, this can be switched on or off at a organizational level. So if security wise, you don't want people to be able to invite external guests to your organization, you can switch it off, but it's an all or nothing. There is some granular control in between. You can set something in place at the back end. It takes a bit of configuration to actually stop it. So people have to request somebody to be invited as a guest first, and then you can add them into a team. But by default, the way Teams work, it's all or nothing. So here I can, let's pick on somebody. Yeah, have I got Tom? Yeah, I'll pick on Tom L. Yep. So he's a member, so he's an internal user. Likewise, I can pick somebody external that doesn't have Teams using my. Let's just get rid of Tom first, because I'm already in there. Let's just try that one more time. So no, okay, that's because I've changed the authorization, so I need to pre-authorize them. Anyway, that guest is already there. So just to show you that, mlawton12@gmail.com is an external guest that's been invited and added into that team. I'll come back to that in a second. So that's the only other thing I wanted to show you within Teams. If there's no questions, Kirsty, Sean, I'll just keep going, if that's all right, because I'm just conscious of time. Let's return to now.
Hi,
the other
Mark.
thing,
there has been a question earlier on, which from Hannah. So can meeting notifications be redirected to someone else if a meeting is scheduled through Teams?
Can a meeting notification be redirected? Let me cover that in the calls, because you can have delegates, which may do what she needs it to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll cover delegates in a second. So when I go onto the calls bit, let me come back to that.
Okay.
So just very, very quickly here, you can pin channels as well at the top, as you can see there. If you want to have something that's again important to you that you want to make it easy to get back to, you can just pin it at the top or unpin them or move them around. So if I want to pin this channel that I've just created here, I can just pin it to the top, and then it's there, and just click it and go straight to it. And that works the same within chats as well. So as I say, Teams and channels are more structured. Chat's a little bit more interactive and ad hoc. So if I go into the chat tab here, you'll see I've got a number. Actually, I've got a little drop down here. So if you want to get to your contact list, which you can create, and how the contact list is built is a little bit convoluted. So it will bring in contacts out of your Outlook contacts as long as they are in your main contact directory. But you can also add contacts in here by clicking the three dots here. So we've got internal users here. So see Andy's on my contact list, Bruce, Louise, Matt, and then down here I've got other contacts. So I've got external. So Nico, as you see, he works for Microsoft. So I've got him on my contact list there. So you've got easy access to them there. If I go back to the actual chat, that just gives me all of my chat history. And as you can see there, a couple of things. I've got Andy pinned at the top because I chat to him a lot. So I want to go straight there. It also keeps the chat conversations that we're having in a meeting. So you'll see our chat conversation there for today's meeting. So it keeps them all in one place. And again, we'll keep them forever. Or if you've got a retention policy, it'll obviously get rid of them depending on what your retention policy is. So the easiest way to start a chat is just click the little chat button here, which is so small you can sometimes miss it. And again, you don't have to have any contacts already in your contact list. Anybody internally you can chat to. So again, if I want to pick on Andy, there you go. I can start having a chat conversation with him, and you'll see it brings up the chat history. So every conversation we've had previously is pulled up there. If I add somebody else into the chat, like Bruce, for example, we've now got a 3-way conversation, and it tells me I'm starting a new conversation. So clearly we haven't had this 3-way conversation before. And you can just keep adding people to that as well. Just using on the right hand side, you'll see there you've got view and add participants. So I can add, let's say, Matt onto there as well. Okay, so now I've got a 4-way conversation. And as I mentioned before, you can pretty much do exactly the same as you do within the channel. So you can if it's an internal conversation, as in there's no external people on there, then you can upload a file to the chat as well. So I'm going to 100 ways to get healthy. Let's pick on that one because it's an easy, short one. Just replace it's already in that team. That's in that chat rather. So send that. So again, that's done a couple of things. So what that's done is obviously posted some text into the chat. It'll notify Andy because he's part of that team that there's a chat conversation. There you go. If I go into the chat there, he'll see it this end. And he's also got access to that document. So that document's actually stored. I instigated the chat, so it's stored in my OneDrive for Business. And again, in exactly the same way that you did in the team, you can edit it directly within Teams. You can download it, you can open it in the app, etc. And anybody that's in this chat has also by default got access to it. So what it does is it uploads it to OneDrive for Business, sets the permissions on that document to say all the people in this chat can access it, and you can all work on it together. Really, really powerful. And then if you say, let's have a conversation, you literally just click the audio call icon here, or the video call icon here. Likewise, I can share content, so I can share my screen if I want to with the team. So I think safe to say most of what we do day to day as a business is chat and work on collaborative documents within the chat. Once we get to the point where they're almost complete or they're completed, then they'll get uploaded into a team and a channel. And I think chat is conversational, teams are informational. So if there's something that you think is going to be interesting or relevant to a wider audience of people, then by all means upload it to the relevant channel, and then it's there, isn't it, for everybody to see, or everybody that's got access to it to see. Obviously chat is a little bit more ad hoc. The other thing you can do with chat, as I mentioned, is chat with external people. So look here, that's my actual address, so I can see Mark's busy. I can message him. Hang on a second. He says, yeah. Okay, so actually I will show you just very, very quickly what that looks like. So because it's a teams to teams conversation, so at the moment you'll see down the bottom, yes, I can compose a message, I can add a calendar appointment, so I can put a smiley face, but I can't actually attach a file yet. Again, that's something that's coming in the future because Microsoft are changing the way that the secure links works in Teams at the moment, just to stop any content coming in that shouldn't. Then you can't actually upload a file through an external chat, but you can call people. So just very, very quickly, this is not going to call me because the reason being I'm on Do Not Disturb. You'll see here I'm presenting. If I flip back to Andy, actually, who's not on Do Not Disturb, then I can do it that way. Just make a bit more sense. So that's right. So on the iPad here, got the chat conversation going. I'll just call. So just press the phone button there. On the iPad, you'll see the call coming in on the bottom right. So that's telling me a couple of things. I'll answer that, but just mute it. Okay, so the way it came in, it's telling me it's a Teams to Teams call because there's no phone number and there's the name of the user. And obviously here I can do a number of things. Once I've got it, I can do things like put it on hold, transfer it to somebody else, I'll consult with somebody else in the organization and then transfer it. So I can consult with Mark. Can you take this call? Okay, so that message has gone to Mark now. If they say, come back and say, yes, that's fine, then you just click there, transfer it to their work number within Teams, or if you've got business, what we call business voice, so you've got that voice enablement side, you can transfer it to their work DDI number or mobile number as well. So again, that's really useful. Sorry, there we go. Put that. Get rid of that. Okay, so back to Andy. So you can see how easy it is to just call somebody externally that's also on Teams, and likewise somebody internally using Teams. So you can start off with a chat, go to a voice call, go to a video call, share information, share your desktop, etc. Very similar to, let's move that up there. Thank you. Let me do that there. So if I go to calls, you effectively get very similar information. If I go to the contact list here, you'll see all the contacts that I've got in my chat contacts, but they're not structured, so they're just all in one place. So some of them are internal, as you can see there. So it shows me his title, his phone number, and I can do a number of things. I can call him. Then you've got people that are external. That let's pick Sue. So it shows you that she's external. So there's no kind of structure in terms of department or favorites or anything like that within that contact view for whatever reason. But if you go into actual speed dial, which is obviously more geared up for making phone calls, then you've got a number of options. So you can add people to your speed dial, the second row down there. So, and that's quite useful if you're using a Teams handset as well, a more traditional phone, because it will actually replicate those over. So you've got quick buttons that you can use. Delegates, I'll come back to, and that hopefully will answer some of the question that was answered before. So you can actually define people that are delegates that can take calls on your behalf. So, and also, things like favorites. So here I've got obviously customers, I've got Risc IT and external people, and I've got internal people here. And again, in exactly the same way, I can pick on Mark Lawton at Risc here, and I can call him from here.
I think Mark's just cut himself off.
I think he has.
I'll pop back in a second.
That's the reason why I don't demonstrate. Because it's it does do that occasionally. So if you press the wrong button, it put you all on hold. So that just to show that it did actually do that. So back to where I was. Thanks for filling, Kirsty.
No.
Yes, so you'll see from that kind of speed dial, what I should have done is done it from Andy's view, which wouldn't have put you on hold. But hopefully you sort of get the point. And I think, as I mentioned before, voicemail also sits there, so you can actually use your voicemail within Teams. Obviously, it will keep your call history, so calls you've made, calls you've missed, calls that you've taken, the duration of them, etc., etc. Obviously here, and if most of you look at your Teams call tab, you won't see this dial pad here. So we've got business voice enabled on this. So we actually brought in a phone number, so people can call me directly on that number, and likewise I can call directly out. I'm not going to make the same mistake again, so I'm just going to put Andy's up again. So you'll see Andy's also got this number here. So if I just call that number, put the glasses on, then so if I call his DDI number from a mobile phone, for example, you'll see it pops up there to say there's an external number calling you. You can answer that because it's Andy's, so it's not going to put you on hold. And again, there are lots of things you can do here. You can transfer it to somebody else. You can add somebody else into the call. So at the moment, it's obviously a two-way call. You can make that three-way call by putting in another number. 747547755, I think, is my spare mobile, hopefully. So that will then dial in another external number. It's ringing now. I'll just answer that. Just remember to put it on mute. Okay, so we've now got 3 people in the call. And again, you can raise this. You can have up to, I think, 250 people in a call. So obviously hugely powerful, very easy way of using telephony. I mean, wherever you are on Teams, wherever you're logged in, then Teams will ring. So you could be in the office like I am now, could be at home, could be anywhere in the world. That number follows you rather than follows a physical device. So whether you're on your laptop or your iPad or you're actually on a Teams handset as well, it will ring up to 7 devices at the same time for you as an individual. So yeah, the calling side of it is hugely powerful. Just very quickly, while I thought about that, I realized that I didn't talk you through very quickly on this one here. I just want to just show you how easy it is to add and pin a document or another app to the top of here. So what I'm going to do actually is pick a Word document here. So pick that existing document I uploaded before, save that. So what that will do is, again, you can pin as much as you like to the top of there. Can't spell question there, Kirsty, don't tell me off. There you go. But obviously you can also add other apps here. So Planners, one of the kind of really popular apps that comes as a part of Office 365. And again, you know, most people are not really taking advantage of it, but you can create a team-wide plan or a channel-wide plan here. You can either pin an existing one that's already been created in that team, or let's call this training plan. I'm not the planner expert, but this is, if you've not used it before, it's a really useful tool for managing small projects. Obviously, Microsoft wanting to buy full-blown projects if you've got proper project management, but it will do a lot of the job. So you can do things like have different buckets of activity, for example, in there, and then you can obviously add tasks, start plan, and assign dates. Say it's due today, as always, and then assign it to somebody, for example, so they'll get notifications to say, oi, that task is due. So and then obviously you can pin that too. So that's a really useful way of doing it. You can run Planner outside of Teams. It's a standalone app in the same way that Outlook or anything else is, but actually it's much more powerful when it's built into Teams. You can also, as I say, pin the application itself on the side here. So they've got this thing called Tasks by Planner. So if I click that, it will give me a view of everything that's I've got in to do, which is effectively your individual task manager, and everything I've got assigned to me in Planner, all in one place. So again, that's quite a useful thing to have pinned to the side there. So you can see there are some tasks there. No, they're not. I haven't actually assigned myself any tasks, but I have got one assigned to me from the business strategy or company plan as well. So that's just a quick example of how to pin things at the top. Okay, I think I probably talked enough around the demo. Just finally, in terms of meetings and having all of your information in one place, as I mentioned, obviously your calendar is in there as part of Teams. A couple of limitations compared to Outlook. Obviously, you can't have multiple calendars. You can't see other people's calendars yet. Again, that's something else that's going to be coming. But there's a couple of things you can do within Teams calendar that you can't within Outlook. So, for example, I'm going to imagine this would be call this test Teams meeting 1. Invite Andy. I'm going to invite my live account. So without stating the obvious, you can invite anybody to a Teams meeting. They don't have to be internal. They don't have to have Teams. Again, as long as they've got a reasonably up-to-date web browser, they can join. The other thing you can do within here is actually notify a channel. So for example, you've got a regular meeting that you want. Rather than inviting everybody in the organization to it, you can just post it in the channel to say this meeting's taking place. So if we go to Teams end user training, you can see we've done a few in the past. So just find it. I'll pop it in the All About Teams one actually. You can put a location, put some details in there. The thing that it does do is to automatically make that a Teams meeting if that isn't stating the obvious. So if I click send now, and it just goes away and does its stuff and sends out the invites and creates the meeting within Teams. Obviously, all of the join details are automatically added into there. So if I go into my Outlook, you'll see it appear in a second. Go to Outlook in the calendar. So there's the one I've just created there. So if I open it in Outlook, you'll see all of the join details are already in there. So I didn't have to think, do I need to make this a Teams meeting or not? It will automatically make it. Likewise, in Outlook, you have a few more steps to go through. So you can create it there as a new Teams meeting. Obviously, you can create the meeting here, invite other people you don't have the option to notify the channel, but obviously you can make it a Teams meeting by clicking that button here, and again it will populate all of the details here. Send that. So that's now the second meeting. If you go back to Teams with a bit of there we go, bit of a refresh, you'll see that that's now appeared in there, and obviously all of the join details are in there as well. So whether you create the meeting in Teams itself or whether you create it in Outlook or the Outlook web app shouldn't really matter. I mean, the Outlook web app actually has some clever features where you can say, make all of my meetings online, and it will automatically populate that. Obviously, every Teams meeting you create, unlike Skype for Business where you had the option to say, I want to use the same link every time, it creates a unique link every time. So just bear that in mind. It's good practice.
Hi, Mark.
Hello, mate.
Sorry to interrupt you. Then Hannah was referring back to a question. It's about delegation.
Okay.
So, Hannah, I don't know if you want to ask the question directly to Mark. Just trying to see if I can actually.
I think it was about the question from earlier on about whether
Yeah.
you can forward the notifications to someone else.
So if you're setting up meetings with somebody, I'll just try and get you, Hannah, and then we can unpin you and then with this. Sorry.
Okay. If not, we'll come to it at the end and try and answer it. I mean, Hannah, you might be needing to drop off, but we will get it answered either now or following on from the session.
And yourself, yeah.
Okay, let's carry on, and we'll answer it at the end. If not, we'll answer it offline and put it into the Q&A document that we're working on. I think that's probably enough on the demo for now, to be honest. I just wanted to finish off with a couple of slides just to summarize what we discussed. As I say, that's a real quick rattle through sort of 80% of what Teams is in 20% of the time, hopefully. So apologies for rattling through so quickly. So a couple of useful again documents that we'll share with you as part of the pack. So this is a summary of who can I collaborate with, using what tools. So obviously, who has access to what, guest users, external users, anyone. So just that's quite a useful summary of what we've just covered. This one probably will look a little bit busy, but it's quite a useful reference. This is something we've been asked for quite a few times. We eventually, thanks to Avanade for doing the original, we've kind of done an updated Risc version of this. Just thinking about, back to the question, we've got all these tools. We've got OneDrive for Business, we've got Outlook, we've got Chat, we've got all SharePoint. What do we use when? So this hopefully gives you a little bit of a summary of what we think, and based on what customers are doing, what's the best thing to use. So clearly, one-to-one or one-to-a-few. If you want some instant decisions made, then call and video are obviously the best approach in terms of urgency. Regarding email, and I've seen this from quite a few customers, and we try and do this ourselves, is to try and stop sending internal emails as much as possible. The more you can do using Chat and Teams, the better, and just leave email for external communications. Again, that's not a black and white thing. We're not dictatorship, but it's, in terms of best practice, that seems to work really well, because it encourages people to use Teams more, and the more people use Teams, the better it gets. But also, keeps the inbox clear for external communications. And then as we get to the kind of smaller, sort of team size communications, then clearly, a more structured, more organized online meeting like we do now works really well. And SharePoint team site. So what we find is that, we still use SharePoint, and lots of customers still use SharePoint as a standalone platform, and that's primarily for documents that are fairly static. So things like compliance certificates, health and safety documents, corporate documents that don't change very often. So once they're finalized and published, probably quite good to put it into a SharePoint team site, basically. And then in terms of organization wide, then I haven't touched on live events, which is the one on the top right, because not all of you will have that. It depends whether you've got enterprise licenses or not, but that gives you the ability to do what we're doing today, but it's a bit more of a one-to-many, a bit more structured, a bit more, it's not as interactive because it's delayed. So that's great for supporting big events, like when Microsoft do their all company presentation and they want 10,000 people on it, they can use live events to do that. But we can cover that in a separate section if that's something anybody's particularly interested. And again, Yammer itself or an organization-wide team that I showed you in the demo is great for that organization-wide communications. Stream, if you've not seen it, is basically the place where the video recording, so the recording that we do today, will be stored in my stream files, and it'll be transcribed as well. So if you go to office.com, go to your apps, you'll see streams in there. As I say, unless you've only got Exchange only, you'll have stream. And then just really to kind of finish in terms of when to use Teams and channels and when to use chats. Again, think about Teams being informational for the wider organization. Think about chats being more conversational. This one looks very busy. Again, we'll just give you this as a printable document. This is again thinking about if I start working on a document, if I've got a proposal to do, then where do I start? Where do I store it? And it's quite a good best practice document again that we've taken from some best practice and enhanced it. So start with it on your OneDrive, put it in a Teams chat, develop it. When it gets more finalized, put it into a team site that you can then share with the wider audience. And then if it's a final document that's not going to change, then maybe publish it on SharePoint. So again, quite a useful reference that you may or may not want to use. I'm going to skip that one because I showed you how a call comes in and how you can transfer it. This is Microsoft to put these little handy videos together, which again, we can share with you that sort of show you how this all works. I'm going to skip. That's just again referencing what I talked about, the fact the files are in one place, whether you look at them through SharePoint, whether you look at them through Teams, or whether you look at them through File Manager on Windows. They are the same. They're the same file effectively. Same with chat, just showing you with there how you attach a document to a chat and where it appears. If you look into your OneDrive for Business under Microsoft Teams chat files, you'll see any files you've shared in a chat will be stored there, and the permissions are set by Teams. I'm going to skip through that. Windows, web, and iPad. One of the big benefits of Teams, and particularly moving things like your voice communications into Teams, is it's a single application, but it can run across multiple platforms. And I know some of these other telephony vendors have apps that run on an iPhone, etc. But obviously, back to the point that Teams does a lot in one place, then the fact that you can run it on Windows, you can run it on a decent web browser, you can run it on a Mac, run it on an iPad, and it's the same program. It's your same telephone number. If you've got a telephone, is a huge benefit. Again, managing mobile apps. If you use the mobile app, it's great. You can do things like click calendar, obviously access your Teams. You can join a meeting with one click, etc., etc. One tip if you're using the mobile app is you can set something called quiet hours. So if you go to settings, notifications here on the third strip, then you can get access to this quiet hours bit here. So you can actually set it to say don't disturb me after 7 o'clock at night, and on a Saturday and Sunday. So that's quite a useful tip if you've not set that before. This shows you what an external invite to a meeting. So inviting somebody that doesn't have access to our team. So effectively they'll just get a link pop up. You don't have to use the Teams app. It's obviously better if they install the Teams app. If not, as long as they join through a web browser, then they'll get access to the content and the voice in the same way that we do. If you're using a modern browser, again, Teams senses that and says, okay, would you like to download the app? Do you want to just continue using the browser? Or if you've already got Teams, do you want to open the Teams app? So it'll actually now put a bit more intelligence in. So it's quite useful when you're inviting external people to a meeting, just to make that experience a little bit easier. Likewise, a guest user, that's what the guest user access looks like. So this is my live.com account. The first time you get an invite to a team, you'll get this little box that says accept the T's and C's, click accept, and then you're effectively in as a member of that organization as a guest, even though you're using, in this case, a live.com account. Yeah, you can't join from a mobile device. Sorry, you can't join a team from a mobile device without the app. You can't do it through a web browser on an iPhone or Android. So you can actually download the app for free, but you don't have to sign up. You can just join as a guest. So again, if you've got customers that don't want to buy into Teams or sign up for Teams, they can just join as a guest. And then just very, very quickly on the devices, again, this is more for those of you that are thinking about actually how can we use Teams for calling internally, Teams to Teams, or even bringing your voice platform to Teams, then there are obviously a lot of devices out there that are Microsoft Teams certified. So effectively they run either a cut down version of Teams, like this Yealink phone here, or they're a USB headset that works with Teams. So when you mute it on the screen, it mutes it on the device and things like that. And again, they work really well. So that's a good place to start if you're thinking about, okay, what devices work well with Teams. And again, this is back to the home working, flexible working. If you're sitting in an office at home on your own with no background noise, then to be honest, you can use pretty much anything. If you are in a busy office, if we ever get back to that point, or if you're in a noisy house, then you might want to get a better headset with some decent noise cancelling that you can effectively block out all of the background noise, both for you and for the people at the other end. But you can obviously spend anything from £30 up to a couple £100 on a decent headset to do that. Things like the iPad, particularly the new ones, the iPad Pro, the quality of the mic and the camera in those is brilliant. So you probably wouldn't need anything else unless you're in a noisy environment. So conscious of time, I'm going to speed up now. So just very quickly, as I mentioned, Microsoft have thrown a lot of stuff into Teams over the last year. So looking back at the start of 2020, it was very different to it is now. And this is not a sales pitch for Microsoft. They have accelerated a lot of the stuff that they were going to bring into Teams over the next 2 to 3 years. They've condensed it down to a year. If you look at, for example, Together View, if you've ever seen that, if not, next time you're in a meeting, if you've got the latest app, if you click the 3 dots and it'll say Together View Preview, you can click that and you'll see all of the people in that kind of lecture theatre layout where they it's meant to be better for you, but better for your brain to see people that way apparently, but obviously was designed primarily for universities and education, but that's just a different view, particularly if you've got a lot of people with video on. Obviously this large gallery view that also you can have, this is now 7x7. I think somebody asked a question. So looking back to this time last year, Teams was only 2x2 live video feeds that you could see at one time. Now it's 7x7 plus obviously you get the active speakers pinned on the right hand side as well. So again, it's been enhanced massively. One of the features that's come recently is that people have been asking for is breakout rooms. I'm not going to demo it today, but I will demo it at some point in the future if you're interested. But basically now, if you've got the latest app and it's supported at the Office 365 end, you can divide up a meeting into breakout rooms, either automatically by saying, I want, as it says there, 2 rooms, 2 people in each one. And then it separates them into breakout rooms that as the organizer, you can then dip in and out of, and you can actually set a time limit. So give them a half an hour, go away, produce some content, come back. So that's something that's been probably the #1 feature that's been asked for, because I know Zoom does that. So that's there now for most people. As always in Microsoft, they roll it out regionally, and it might take a few weeks for it to start to appear in your Teams app, but it should be there at some point in the next few weeks. It's there for us now, so hence that screenshot this morning. I mean, in terms of the more softer side of remote working, then Microsoft, as you'd expect, produce tons of content. This is probably the most useful landing page. Again, we'll send you the link to this, which is more around how to divide up your time, how to set up your kind of workspace if you are working from home and maybe struggling with it a little bit, and how to sort of interact with people. And I think what we find the best ways, obviously, when we were in the office, we had pods of teams of people we could just look at and see who was available, and obviously you can't do that now because people are all over the place. But using the present status and using your contact list to set your team up, your individual teams with all the people, and you can see at an instant whether they're online and available, in a call, away, etc. So that that does help. That presence side of things is a big help. So some kind of hints and tips more on the softer side there. And then just finally, in terms of the roadmap, looking back at the start of March 2020, when this whole pandemic thing started to kick in, what Teams looked like, then these are all the things that were on the priority list. Obviously, the ones that have been crossed out have now been delivered by Microsoft. So you can do multiple chat windows. You can't do multiple call windows yet. Again, that's coming quite quickly. You haven't fully got Outlook integrated into Teams yet, so your inbox isn't there, but your calendar is. So it's partly there, if that makes sense. But again, that's on the roadmap. Breakout rooms out the bottom is the latest one that's been done. But thinking about things like the roadmap, again, if that's something you're interested in, if you're an IT decision maker or you're just interested in what features are coming down, then there's a Teams roadmap, which is basically all the things that Microsoft have committed to do. They also have this thing called user voice. So if there's a feature that you think, God, I really need that, is it available? And it's on user voice. You can vote it up, and when it hits a certain level, Microsoft will take a look at it and say, okay, yeah, all right, we'll put that into development now. So they do actually listen sometimes, depending on what it is you want. But there's a lot of, the Teams roadmap itself probably looks 12 months out, whereas the user voice probably looks further out at things that are nice to have rather than committed. Again, a summary, just to summarize everything that I've sort of talked about, really, and I won't go through these line by line, but I think it is a single place, and I think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think the more people use it, and again, the whole adage of being driven from the top down, the more you use it from a senior level down, the more people will embrace it. And I think the more they embrace it, the more documents that are stored in there, the more content, the more messages that are in there that you can search, the more powerful it becomes. In terms of us and what we're doing, for those of you that are interested in more of the unifying comms, so the voice side, we've got a separate event that we're running, and Sean will give you the dates for that one. We're also running this end user flexible working one probably every couple of weeks now. So there's another date next week for this session today, if you've got anybody that's interested. And then in the future, these are some of the ones we ran last year, which we haven't quite set dates for this year yet. I think probably like everybody, we were hoping that we'd be in a better position to go and meet people face to face by now, but it looks like that's not going to happen anytime soon. So we'll probably kick these off as webinars again. So Powering the Modern Workplace is about securing your end users and the whole Cyber Essentials side of things, and then securing your modern Microsoft Teams is, as I mentioned, Redstor can do that sort of backup and recovery of Office 365 and Teams. So yeah, there's a few sessions. We will be running some more as well. So as I say, Sean will keep you informed on what's coming up, and obviously take your pick if it's interesting. Then be good to see you.
Can
again.
I just interrupt quickly there? A lady's asked if we have a course on Planner. So is that something that we're hoping to do in the future, or are we covering another course? Or
I'm not sure I could talk about Planner for more than half an hour, but it's a good one actually. What I have got, no, the short answer is no, but what I have got is some really useful video content that Microsoft produced, so which is a good place to start, which covers both To Do, which is obviously your personal task stuff, and then Planner, which is your more team planner stuff. So I would suggest that we send you those links to start with. Have a look at that. And if you think that you want to dive a little bit deeper, then I'm sure we can put something together. I've had a couple of customers ask me actually. Interestingly, that really interested.
Well, make sure we get that across to you then, Debbie.
Yeah, and actually, just thinking about in terms of useful content, how can we help? Yeah, so as you'd expect, we've got some other services that we can help customers with. So if you want help with, we call it Teams Fast Track. So how do I get Teams up and running in the organisation and deploy it out to users and get users to adopt it? Then we can help you there. That's called Teams Fast Track. The session we're running today, we do a more bespoke one for individual organisations. Again, that's called Quick Start. So we can obviously offer those out as well, but I won't do a big sales pitch here. But one thing we can do, if you're interested, again, particularly in the voice side, is we can do a free proof of concept for 30 days. If you want to put a telephony into your Teams platform and try it out, then Microsoft and WaveNet very kindly have offered free 30-day licenses for up to 25 users. So that's an offer that's there for all of you. I won't go through all of these links, but Microsoft do actually produce some. They produce tons of content, but there's actually some useful quick videos at this link here. But also you can access them. One other bit I just wanted to very quickly show you. I know I keep saying that, but this is the last bit, I promise. If you click the help icon down here on your Teams app and then go to training, there you go. So what that is exactly the same content that you'll get from that link, but it's obviously sits within your Teams app. And effectively, these are short videos. So if there's a subject that you want to know more about, or if it's something I've talked about, you thought, what was he talking about? I could do with knowing a bit more about that. Then these little short videos are really useful, and effectively the script that I've been through this morning in the sequence pretty much follows this guide here. So how to set up a team, how to set up a channel, how to post messages, how to manage meetings, how to set teams up on your mobile, things like that. Also, there's a whole section on live events, again, if that's something you're interested in. Planner isn't mentioned here, but as Kirsty said, that I've got some useful links for Planner as well, so we'll include that. But yeah, if you're sitting in your Teams app thinking, how on earth do I do that? Then so just click Help, Training, and then it takes you to these videos here. And that's the first one's obviously an overview of Teams as a whole. Okay, so I'm conscious that's 11:30 now. So I'm not sure whether we should take the questions offline. Kirsty, how many have we got that I haven't answered, other than all of them?
I think the only
Didn't answer the
one.
delegate one, did I really?
Oh yeah, I think that's the only one. We've answered most of them in the chat, I believe. Okay,
I think if you don't mind, I'll take that one offline, and we'll get back to you on that. Give me a bit more time to have a think about it. I'm conscious you've been on for an hour and a half, which is longer than we normally do. So thanks for your attention, and thanks for staying with us. So hopefully that was useful to you. Again, Sean will send out the recording from today and all of the relevant content, including that Q&A document. So maybe give us a few hours to put the other answers in there before we update it, and then we'll send that across to you. But obviously my contact details will be in there as well. So if there's anything specific you want to pick up with me, whether you're an existing customer or not, fine, just ping me a note or book some time for a chat, and we can move it forward, hopefully. So hopefully that's useful. I think Kirsty, Sean, Jeremy, we'll end it there if that's okay.
Okie doke. Thank you.
Right when my actual screen's gone. Thanks everyone.